Good morning, friends. On behalf of the School of Engineering and Technology, Indira Gandhi National Open University, I, Rakhi Sharma, Program Coordinator of this ACPDM program, welcome you all. Today's teleconferencing program has two sessions, and we will discuss about the topic, the use and conservation of energy in India and demand-side management. These topics are based on your Block 1 of the course 2, Energy Management and IT Applications. It's our privilege to have Mr. Saurabh Kumar, Secretary, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, as an expert of today's lecture. Now I request Mr. Saurabh Kumar to present his lecture.
Thank you, madam, and welcome everyone in this teleconferencing under the IGNOU Advanced Certificate Program in Distribution Management. As I have been introduced, I will be taking two sessions. The first session would be the use and conservation of energy in India, and thereafter in the second session we will discuss something about the demand side management, particularly the way it has to be driven and led by the distribution companies. Now, before I get on to my presentation, I would just like to give a very brief overview of what energy conservation is and how it became an international agenda in the world's scheme of things. You may be aware that the world came up in the first energy shock, which was led by the oil crisis in 1973. That is the time when the Western developed nations saw the advantages of energy conservation, and essentially energy conservation and efficiency means doing the same amount of output with a lesser amount of energy. Thereafter, the second oil shock, which was in 1979, also brought other nations to the fore, and India was not too far behind, and a small setup was established in the National Productivity Council, and that was in early 80s, which essentially talked about industrial energy efficiency. Thereafter, this cause was taken over by the Ministry of Power, and somewhere in 1988, an Energy Management Center was set up, which was a registered society and under the administrative control of Ministry of Power. Now that Energy Management Center basically did not have any legal background to it. It was more of a coordinated efforts. It was trying to pool in resources which are available internationally. It was trying to see where interventions can take place and how the energy intensity of the country, of the economy, can be reduced. Basically, as I mentioned, the basic goal was to complete the task with a smaller level of energy use. Now this continued till about late 90s, when the government decided that it is now time to have a legislation in place, and therefore what came out was the Energy Conservation Act, which was enacted in 2002 in India, and it is the first such law to be passed in India which deals with energy efficiency and conservation. And under the Act, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which I represent here, was set up as a statutory body under the Ministry of Power, and in the state governments also something called the state designated agencies was set up and have been set up, and at the moment we have about 30 states and union territories who have designated their agencies for undertaking energy conservation and efficiency measures. So with this brief background, I would like to take you through my presentation. What I would talk about is basically what has been the energy use and supply patterns in the country. How can we use energy efficiently, and I will take you through sector-wise. The third thing that I will talk about is what are the barriers, if any, for efficient use of energy. And lastly, as I mentioned upfront, we will discuss in some detail about the Energy Conservation Act, plus what has been the policy interventions from the central government level through the Ministry of Power, through the Bureau of Energy Efficiency to promote energy efficiency in the country. Now, as you see from this slide, there has been a very impressive growth of total primary energy supply in the country. It has risen from about 350 million tons oil equivalent in 1990 to nearly 600 million tons of oil equivalent in 2004. It represents an increase of about 2.2% per year. Now, obviously, a developing economy requires energy. There is no reason for India not to increase its energy supply to the country, and therefore this trend has to continue. This trend will continue for some time to take care of the development needs. I will just share with you certain factors, certain facts about the energy use in the country. The per capita energy consumption in the country is somewhere around 600 units per year, which is almost 1/6 of the what is there in the developed world. So, when we talk about increasing energy supply, it is a necessary condition insofar as development needs of the citizens of this country is concerned. I will just again give a very brief digression at this point in time because I think it is necessary, and people like you who are there in the distribution companies must also remember this particular fact. There is a huge amount of concern in the international community about climate change. Obviously, one of the main nations that they are looking at is India and China, because what you see on this graph, the primary energy supply is increasing in both the countries. Most of this energy supply comes from the fossil fuels, and burning of these fuels emit huge amount of carbon dioxide. However, therefore, there is a huge amount of international pressure on these two developing countries, India and China, to cut down on emissions. Now, the fact remains that it is a question of development versus environmental concerns. Where do you draw the line? Who has polluted this earth? It is not India and China. If you see the per capita emissions of carbon dioxide, even today, India is maybe 1/20th of what US or any other developed country do. And therefore, in the recently concluded Gleneagles dialogue of the G8, where the Honorable Prime Minister of the country was invited to talk about emission reductions, what he spelled out India's stand that we would never exceed the per capita emissions and per capita availability of electricity or energy as compared to the developed world now. It is a right that India will not forego, and therefore why I wanted this digression to come in is that you at the level of the distribution companies, if you are faced with this question, this is what our reply should be. We in the country have as much right for development, for energy, as anybody else in the world. Now, what are the energy use patterns in various sectors? We start off with households. Households basically are biomass, kerosene or LPG and electricity, and what it is used for is cooking, lighting, water heating, etc. There is a shift from biomass to electricity. This has happened worldwide, this is happening in the country, and as I mentioned in the last slide, that is one of the primary reasons why the energy supply in the country has to increase. The second sector is industry. And what are the basic energy inputs? Are biomass again, petrol, coal, gas and electricity. And it is used for various different purposes. The third and very important sector is agriculture, which uses a huge amount of diesel and much more than that, electricity. There are estimated about 20 million agriculture pump sets in the country. It's about 2 crores of pumps. And I'm sure most of you being in the distribution utilities realize how much energy is going in this sector. Our estimates show that the entire agriculture sector, where almost 90% of the energy used is for pumping, consumes about 30% of total energy consumption in the country. And just to give you a small number, the total energy supplied last year was close to 700 billion units. So we are talking about a huge and a large chunk of electricity going into agriculture. I will talk about the efficiency part of it in the later slides. The next is the commercial building. Now, again, one has to keep in view why this is important and why we have taken this out and put this as a separate sector which needs to be seen. The reason is, if you see the last 5 or 6 years trend of electricity generation, and you see the sectoral trend of commercial energy use in the country, there is a huge mismatch. And I'm sure most of you in the distribution utilities realize the number of commercial connections and realize the amount of energy that is being used in the commercial sector. The electricity generation has increased somewhere around 5% in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. Whereas the commercial energy during the same period is rising, particularly from 2004, at a rate of over 7 to 8%. Now that is a huge mismatch as insofar as supply demand is concerned. Now why this is happening is, again, you have to go back to the economic growth model that India has been taking up in the last decade and a half. Most of it has been a service-led growth. The service industry is growing, and it is growing at a very fast pace. The growth of services has fast outpaced the growth of manufacturing and agriculture, if you take the 3 important sectors there. Obviously, what does a service sector require? It requires a commercial building. It requires air conditioning. It requires lighting. All this has seen a huge explosion in the number of new buildings that are coming up everywhere in every part of the country. It has increased the requirements for air conditioning, for lighting, and so on and so forth. So this is an important area which has to be looked at when we talk about energy efficiency. And the last such sector is the transport sector. Now this sector also is a very, very high growth sector which uses less of electricity but more of petrol and diesel, and there is obviously a need to reduce efficiency. Although I will not talk about this transport sector because it does not really concern your day-to-day requirements of work, but we will talk about all others nevertheless. Now, as I mentioned in the last slide, that there is a wide variety of usage as far as energy is concerned, and therefore there has to be diversity of energy forms. There are diversity of conversion processes, and obviously there is diversity of primary energy supply sources. That is because the use of energy, as I mentioned in the last slide, for different sectors is different. Therefore, what do we do? Utilization, distribution and conversion of energy are absolutely essential for economic growth. And the last bullet, the infrastructure or the lack of it determines energy use choices. Now what does it really mean? If you see the distribution sector in the country as a whole, the average, the aggregate transmission and commercial losses in the country are estimated to be over 33%, which means if 100 units of electricity goes into the distribution system, what comes out is only 67 units. So there is a huge losses of the system. Obviously, it has not just technical spin-offs, but also a very huge financial spin-off. The utility in the country does not have enough resources because of the such large amount of losses to invest in infrastructure. What do we have? Old transformers. We are unable to service the existing customers. The reliability of power becomes an issue, and the rural sector is completely out of the radar of most of the distribution utilities. At an average, just about 50% of the households in the country are electrified, and the 11th plan that we are currently into seeks a very ambitious target of providing at least 1 unit of electricity per household, per capita in a household. Now that's a very ambitious target. Again, it could look dichotomous to you that I mentioned that our per capita consumption is about 600 units per year, and I am now talking about a lifeline consumption of 1 unit per day. It is not, because if you see the sectoral mix of the energy consumption pattern, most of the energy is used by industry, and that is how the per capita is calculated. It does not, it's an average. It does not tell you what is the diversities within those sectoral things. So what has happened is that more than 50% of people do not consume electricity, and when they do not consume electricity, as the last bullet here shows, the energy use choices are limited. They have to find other alternatives, which is kerosene, maybe biomass. But again, as I indicated earlier, there will be a shift from these fuel choices to electricity, which from the consumer's point of view is a more efficient fuel to use, because for biomass you have to collect wood, you have to, for LPG or for kerosene you have to go to the market and get that. But here it comes to you on its own. So this is the pattern at the moment, and there will be a transition as far as energy supply of these primary sources are concerned. Now this is something that I'm sure all of you are aware about it. It probably does not come out very well in this slide. I'm sorry about that, because it is slightly smaller to be actually seen. What I would probably do is to give you a brief background. As I mentioned, it's about 33% is the losses in the distribution sector alone. Now if you see from the supply side to the demand side, which means from the generator to the actual consumer, and let us try and see where the losses occur and where interventions can take place by you, people like you, or maybe the government or the regulator. From as far as the generating capacity is concerned, there is, our plants are pretty efficient, particularly the thermal plants all over the country. Our PLFs are perhaps the best in the world, but there is still a room for improvement. The room for improvement is on specific oil consumption. There is a room for improvement in the efficiency of the generator itself. Most of the generators that are used in the country are in the range of 33 to 34%, which means for 100 units of coal used, they only produce about 33% of electricity. The technology has grown. We are talking about supercritical plants, where the average efficiencies are somewhere around 40%. So that is one intervention that could take place. Thereafter, we come to the bulk transmission. Now, as far as the bulk transmission is concerned, our network is perhaps one of the best in the world, and I'm quite proud in saying this, that the national grid that has been evolved, where we are transferring close to 20,000 megawatts of power from one region to the other, almost the entire country is running on a synchronous mode. There the technical losses are not more than 2 to 3%, which is a benchmark of the...
Yes. There is a call from Preet Pahar, Delhi. Yes, Delhi, please ask your question.
गुड मॉर्निंग
Good morning, please ask your question.
स्लाइड्स का जो फॉन्ट है वो अगर आप इंक्रीज करके थोड़ा सा दिखा सकें तो अच्छा होगा तो दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है
सारे फॉन्ट की बात कर रहे हैं कि इसकी बात कर रहे हैं?
Actually, in some slides there is problem.
if you can increase the font of the
Okay, I will try. Okay.
slides so we can visualize it.
Okay, I will try that, right? Okay, we will try this and give it to you. Yes, just to round off what I was saying, the problem really is in distribution, and it is not just the fact that there are technical losses, but there are commercial losses as well. If you recall, somewhere in the year 2003 and 4, the Ministry of Power moved away from the transmission and distribution losses to something what we now call as aggregate technical and commercial losses. Because the transmission and the technical and distribution losses did not account for what was not being billed, what was being taken away, which was stolen. So that is essentially what we see in the supply chain. I again apologize for the small font of this, and we will try and get over it as soon as possible. But the basic message going across is that in the entire supply chain there are huge amount of losses. The maximum losses and where the maximum amount of intervention is needed is the distribution sector. This is just a quick round off of the kind of the composition of energy use in those 5 sectors that I just mentioned. And if I'll just quickly run through this. Households consume, basically the cooking is the main thing for most of the people, followed by lighting, space conditioning and appliances, and so on and so forth. Again, going back to agriculture, as I mentioned, most of it goes for pumping and motive power. Commercial buildings, again, you see there are just 3 things that they require, which is space conditioning. Most of these commercial buildings are centrally air conditioned or heated buildings. Lighting forms an important load, and water heating also obviously is another important area, particularly for hotels, for hospitals, etc. And in all these things, the efficiencies are quite low. Then there are large variations in efficiencies. I'll just give you a small background to it. In the cement sector, there are 3 cement plants in the country which are amongst the most efficient in the world, whereas there are about 10 to 15 cement plants which are among the most inefficient in the world. So the bandwidth is very, very huge. Now this is what I briefly mentioned about in the earlier slide, and this probably will give you a slightly better idea of what we were talking about. As I mentioned, for 100 unit of coal, only 35 units of electricity is produced. That is the level of efficiency that we have. Although here I have been slightly conservative and said that only 23% electricity is lost in the distribution. According to me, the number is much more than this. However, this is a ballpark figure which we can live with. Therefore, 12 units of electricity goes to a household. What happens then? You put on an incandescent bulb. The efficiency, the lighting efficiency of an incandescent bulb is absolutely poor, which means for 12 units of electricity, it emits 11 units of heat and produces light worth of 1 unit. So if you see the entire chain, energy chain as I would like to call it, 99% of primary energy is lost while delivering 1 unit of light energy. Now this is a scenario which I am sure all of you will agree is not a sustainable option for the country. Now I will come back to my original subject of efficiency, and I thought it is better to approach it in this in this pictorial depiction of these two. The first, the picture that you see is something that was already there in the last slide. Now what happens if we change that bulb, the extreme right hand corner, to a CFL? And immediately you will see that for the same amount of light that it emits, one amount of light, now in this we will go from right to left. What I require is only 2 units of electricity. Why? Because it's a more efficient light. It does not produce heat in the manner an incandescent bulb does. If you see the comparative on the upper display. Therefore, working backwards, I require in my distribution system just 6 units of electricity. Therefore, I require only 17 units of coal, because all other efficiencies are the same. And that is why this is a very, very important slide, and it is a very, you have to understand this, how much important is the intervention at the demand side of the supply chain. If you use efficient equipment at the consumption end for the same amount of output, a CFL produces same amount of lumen output as an incandescent bulb, and so which means you are not compromising on lighting quality, but you are using only 17% of primary coal. Now that is not, you are not only conserving your resources, because the coal reserves in the country are limited. It is not that they will be there forever. Number 2, you are reducing the emissions of carbon dioxide which are there when you burn coal, and it's a win-win situation for everyone. Plus, with something which I will talk in much detail about in the next session, the utility will not have to plan for 100 units. It will have to only plan for 17 units. Now that is also a huge consideration as far as resource planning for utility is concerned. This is just this particular slide is just about a round off of what we have discussed, so I will quickly go over it. As I indicated, losses occur at all stages of the chain. Reducing losses at the consumption level has a cascading effects upstream, and there is a need for every one of us, particularly people in the electricity business, to talk about energy efficiency in the country. Energy efficiency is a win-win option, as we just saw, but why is it not happening? The first thing is that consumers do not have enough information. For example, if you see the CFLs, which is basically a compact fluorescent lamp, the penetration in household sector in the country is somewhere around 4 to 5%. Whereas in the commercial sector, you go to your own offices, you go to a shopping mall, you go to a restaurant, you go to a hotel, the entire lighting load is on CFL. Why is it happening? The reason is very simple. An incandescent bulb in the country costs about 10 rupees. A CFL costs you about 100 rupees. So while for a commercial establishment it makes a huge amount of sense to invest that money and get paid off by reduced energy bills, the domestic consumers, there is a first cost bias, and that is true for almost most of the energy efficient technologies, because these are better products. These technologies are slightly costlier than what is used, and there is a behavioral pattern that there is some issue about the efficacy of the lighting. I am now particularly talking about the CFLs, that the lighting is not pure, etc., etc. But the main reason is the first cause and lack of awareness. And obviously, when you have this, the risk perception in the mind of an individual who is making a purchase decision is uncertain. He is not aware about the technology. He is a risk. Usually, most of the people like us are risk averse, we have a huge amount of inertia. We would like to go by something which is tested, trusted and tried. Therefore,
Yes, Allahabad, please ask your question.
Sir, I presume that in the slides that you had shown,
yeah.
you have taken the distribution losses to approximately 80%.
No, distribution losses are not 80%. It is somewhere around 23.
35 units you had put in,
Yeah.
23 units were out,
Yes.
and 12 units went to the
Correct. Correct.
household.
Yes.
So that comes out to be around 80%.
Correct.
So the calculation goes wrong here.
No, it is not. It is not wrong. It is not wrong. I mean, as I mentioned, this is only trying to tell you that this is the kind of losses that occur. Yes, there is. It's about 60-65%. Let me share with you. We are sitting in New Delhi. New Delhi got privatized in the year 2002, and it was given away to two distribution companies. The assessed losses by an independent company, by an independent evaluator, was somewhere around the area of 65 to 70%. Now this is a real factual figure, and what is being reported is something not real. So I am trying to take a realistic figure from what we have.
Yes, Poona, please ask your question. Yeah, there is a call from Poona. Please.
I think we have lost him.
The phone has disconnected. Yes.
Now I'll just, since we are nearly about finishing the time, the last bullet of this presentation is of this slide, sorry, is also a very important thing, particularly in the building area. Now what happens in a building, particularly I'm talking about the commercial building, there is a mismatch as far as incentives to build energy efficiency is concerned. Energy efficiency buildings naturally would cost about 5 to 10% more. But who enjoys the benefit? It is not usually the owner, because the owner does not reside normally in the building that he builds.
Yes, Poona, please ask your question.
I'm Atul Patil calling from Pune. Did you hear me?
Yeah, you
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please ask your question.
Hello, Atul Patil calling from Pune.
Please ask your question.
Yeah, I want to know some information regarding CFL.
Yeah. Go ahead. Tell me.
People are now talking that there has been hazardous content, that is mercury in CFL.
Okay. I have understood your question. Yeah.
Then in this regard, whether there has been any precaution has been taken for non-pollution of environment.
Okay. I think that's a very important question, and I thank you
Thank
for.
you.
Yeah. Let me I mean, talk about the mercury thing. There has been a lot of talk about mercury in CFLs. Let me first tell you what CFL is. CFL is only a tube light which is miniaturized. It is a tube light that we have been using for more than a couple of decades. That's number one. Let us be very clear on what CFL is. It's not something new. It's just a tube light which has been put in a small package, and that is about all. That is number one. Number two, it is not more efficient than a tube light. Number three, the average mercury content in a CFL in India is less than 5 milligrams of mercury. Now, how much is the, I'm sure you may be knowing how much is the mercury content in tube lights. In a tube light, in a typical tube light, it is about 50 milligrams. Number three, all of us use thermometers at home. Clinical thermometers I'm talking about. I'm not sure if you know how much mercury is there in that thermometer which all of us take in our mouth to measure body temperature. It's close to 500 milligrams. Now, I'm not trying to say that we should not do anything about mercury. All I'm trying to say is that these issues really are not the most relevant issue at the moment. We have been living with tube lights for more than 30 years. We have been living with the thermometers from times immemorial. Why is so much of hue and cry on a product which has 1/10 of mercury as compared to a tube light? 1/100th of mercury content as compared to something that we have in every house. So please do not get disturbed by these things. Let me assure you that the Ministry of Environment and Forest has already set up a task force which is talking about the safe management of mercury. Let me also tell you that under the present regulations of the Ministry of Environment and Forest, the CFL does not fall into the hazardous substances because the definition is it has to contain 50 milligrams of mercury per kilogram of product, which it does not. So please do. There have been lots said and written about mercury, but I think it is basically a non-issue as far as the efficient lighting is concerned. Now I will try and round off my presentation by talking about the barriers which I have already mentioned somewhere here and there. Many barriers are there. The most important ones is that the comparative energy use information is largely unknown. The fact that the fact that CFL uses 1/5 of energy than an incandescent bulb gets clouded by issues of mercury, which I think is a non-issue. The next thing, obviously a very important barrier, is the first cost. A CFL costs you almost 5 to 10 times, maybe 10 times more than an incandescent bulb. Then, amongst all these things, there is an uncertainty about the final output, the reliability, because it is not known. And the cost and benefits accrue to different people. In case of a commercial building, if I do a energy efficient building and I don't live into it, I rent it out to tenants, there is no incentive for the owner to have an energy efficient building, and there is no incentive on the tenant as well to have because he does not have a permanent property right to it. Therefore, the government set forth the Energy Conservation Act in 2001, which was notified in 2002, to address some of these market failures that have been occurring for a large, widespread use of energy conservation. And some of the major highlights of the Act are setting minimum energy standards for various equipments. You may have noticed some Bureau of Energy Efficiency labels on appliances, particularly air conditioners, refrigerators and tube lights. The Ministry of Power also came out with the Energy Conservation Building Code. The Honorable Minister of Power launched these codes in the month of May 2007. Then the next most important thing which the Act addresses is something called the designated consumers. These are high energy using industries, and the government requires them by a mandate, by a notification, by a regulation to report what is the kind of energy use which they are doing, and what are the kinds of efforts they are doing for energy efficiency. Now, this is what the Act says, and what does the Bureau of Energy Efficiency to implement the Act is doing. Number one, promoting energy efficiency in distribution companies, and that is where you in the distribution companies spread over the country have a large role to play. Number two, as you may have noticed that if you replace an incandescent by a CFL, you use 1/5 of energy, which means if I can secure those energy bills which are reduced, it's a paying proposition. We can have a business model. One can get the private sector into it, and that is something called the energy service companies. Now, energy service companies do this job of investment upfront, if the first cost is a bias, and get paid off by way of reduced energy bills. But as I will talk about in the next session, this is not happening. What is what is required is a market transformation. And one of the key elements of market transformation is an outreach and awareness program. People must be told. People should know what is the comparative energy use, what are the improvements which can be possible by efficient use of energy. Now this is what I have mentioned, that the labeling of appliances have commenced from the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and at the moment it is on a voluntary basis, because we feel that it is something that people should embrace. It is something which is good for the nation, for the mankind as a whole. What we are now taking on is labeling of LPG burners, ceiling fans, motors, consumer electronics, and so on and so forth. The Energy Conservation Building Code is put out again on voluntary basis. What we are trying to do is to enhance the capacity and the institutional strength to implement this process. I talked about the designated consumers. 9 sectors have been notified, and energy use monitoring and reporting has been mandated for them. The first such reports should start flowing in from 2008, and I think it would be this data would be an important policy tools for all of us in the sector, particularly people in the utilities like you. What else are we doing in the country to build capacity as far as energy conservation and efficiency is concerned? The Bureau of Energy Efficiency has conducted 4 national examinations to certify energy auditors and energy managers. Almost 3,000 people have been certified. The next exam is scheduled for November this year. The whole concept of ESCO are being taken up to have a market, to create a market, so that there is a widespread proliferation of energy efficiency regime in the country. Then, as I mentioned, awareness is an important element of our strategy, and along with awareness, an incentive program has also been created. The National Energy Conservation Award, which is usually chaired by the Honorable President or the Prime Minister, shows the commitment of the highest political leadership for this cause. And by this thing, we not only incentivize people, but also try and create sectoral benchmarks. So that is all that I have to say in this first session, and I would be happy if there are any questions, although I think we have just about finished the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will be here again in discussion at sharp 10 o'clock. Thank you.